Continuing our studies in Ezra, and I gave you a little sheet there to show that Ezra and Nehemiah and Esther are three books that fit within a chronological framework in history. The book of Ezra begins, and then Nehemiah completes, and Esther kind of works its way back into the middle from a chronological standpoint. And I gave you those key dates if you want to see them. The Babylonian invasion of Judah, there were three invasions and three carrying aways. The first one, when they invaded, was about 606 BC, and that's covered in Daniel 1. And then the second invasion we saw a few weeks ago in 2 Kings 24, and that was verses 10 through 17. And then the final invasion, that second invasion was 598 BC, and then 18 years after the first invasion was the third and the final invasion with Zedekiah, and Jerusalem entirely fell. Between 606 and 588, there were some of those rotten kings at the end, those four no good kings, but finally it fell apart at the end of 2 Kings 25. And they went into a captivity that, if you look, God counted it from the first invasion, from 606 until 536. That's 70 years that they were under the sway of Babylon, just according to what God had told the prophet Jeremiah was going to happen when Jeremiah was trying to preach them ahead of time to repent and turn back to the Lord. He told them back in Jeremiah 25 and verse 11 that the whole land shall be a desolation and an astonishment, and that these nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years. And God let them know that it would be a 70-year period. They'd be under the Babylonian influence. For it had been 490 years since they had been in the land, and they had ignored God's Sabbath, and he meant the Sabbath year more than anything. So there were 70 Sabbath years they ignored, and God put them away for those 70 years for the land to have its 70 years of Sabbath to do with. When God says that you are to worship him the way he said, if you ignore his dictates, he's going to get it out of you one way or the other. And he got it out of the people this way. I have a feeling with the Christians, and there's a lot of Christians, and I was talking to one on the phone today, and we did that drawing the other day on the board, that you first become a believer, and then Jesus says then you can move up to a disciple if you continue in his word, and then if you are a disciple, then he can maybe choose you to office. And there's that threefold step of increase from beginning believer to a disciple. That would be from a child to a young man, and then certain young men he'll choose to office. But these two groups here, the young men and the office holders, are considered the men of his army, and he uses them, disciples and office holders. Those are the people he uses. Sadly, most Christians want to stay at the baby level. They don't want to grow up, and they just want to be believers, and they want to do what they want to do. That's most of Christianity, and they're not honoring God's Sabbath. I'm using the term in an allegorical rather than a literal sense, because there is no Sabbath today, but there is the rest of Jesus Christ that these people should be resting in. They should be letting Jesus live through them rather than them still directing their life. And I believe in the millennium, God's going to give them their time there where he's got to work these things out. Yes? Yeah, the average Christian today wants to be served rather than serve. That is truth. Now, anyways, looking at our chart here. So in 536 BC, God, after he allowed Babylon to fall to the Medo-Persian Empire, exactly as he had prophesied in the book of Daniel, chapter 2, and the fall came in Daniel chapter 5, and you can read about it there at your own leisure sometime. And then at that time, when the Medes and the Persians took over, there was Darius, was the head of the Medes, and his nephew Cyrus was the head of the Persians. Cyrus permitted the Jews to return after 70 years. And that's where we've been in Ezra. And so we see in Ezra chapter 1, verse 1, in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah, that it might be fulfilled, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, and he made a proclamation that the people could return to their land, and they were permitted to come back. And what we'll see as we go through the book of Ezra is the people will begin to rebuild the altar of worship by chapter 3. And in the rebuilding, they did first things first. You need to get the altar proper, and then after you get the altar, you should complete the temple. But the work then stopped for 15 years. And so they started, and then they halted, and they would, if you want to use the term backslid, they backslid. And backsliding is a term that kind of works this way. In order to backslide, all you could do is just stand still and stop walking with the Lord. And then what happens is he's getting ahead of you, because he keeps on moving. And all of a sudden, the distance between you and the Lord is growing. And for 15 years, the work stopped there. But the work finally resumed 15 years later, as it happens in the 5th chapter. And if you just want to peek ahead, you'll see one of the ways that God was able to get that moving was by using a couple of prophets. And it says in chapter 5, verse 1, and then the prophets Haggai, the prophet, and Zechariah, the son of Iddo, prophesied to the Jews. And through the getting a couple of preaching prophets in front of those people, he was able to stir them up and to rebuild, to begin for a second time the rebuilding of the house of God. And they finally took about 5 years to finish that work, and the temple was completed and dedicated in the following chapter. So now we're looking at your timeline here, and now we're up to about 515 BC. And within 5 years, Esther becomes the queen of Persia. And that's in Esther chapter 2. So you'll see how the chronology, Esther's fitting in there. Now, the curious thing about the book of Ezra, which not many people understand, is the book of Ezra, although it was written by Ezra, he personally was not there for a lot of what happened. He wrote his account just like Luke wrote his account of the Gospels. He wrote his account after he arrived. And it's in the 7th chapter of Ezra when he begins to come. And this is when Ezra finally travels to Jerusalem. And by the time he comes, Artaxerxes is now king of Persia. And it's about 558 BC. And Ezra, and it tells you that he's one of the sons of Zadok by verse 2, which means he's one of the sons of Aaron the high priest. And verse 6, Ezra went from Babylon and he heads over to Jerusalem. And when he gets there, he continues as a teaching priest to help order the services within that temple that's been completed, because things are starting to slide there. And Ezra 7 through 10 is about that time period. He is there. Now, shortly after he arrives, maybe about a decade or so later, Nehemiah comes. And Nehemiah, we're going to see, he comes about 445 BC. And when he comes, he as a governor and as a civil leader, because now all the religious work has been done with the temple, he now oversees the rebuilding of the city and its walls and the order of the government. And that's what the book of Nehemiah is about. So maybe that will help you, sort of, kind of, in your understanding chronologically as to what happens here. And these 3 books, Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther, cover about 160-year period or so. And in the midst of it is the book of Esther. So that particular time period when the Medes and the Persians are leading and the Jews are under them is covered in those 5 books, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, and the prophetical books of Haggai and Zechariah, just so you can kind of fit it all together and see where it goes. Now today we come to the 2nd chapter. And in the 1st chapter, Cyrus made the proclamation, and we saw the chief fathers of Judah and Benjamin and the Levites. They began to rise up, and they began to gather together their goods as they started to head back to Jerusalem out of Persia, which was actually, they were now ruling the land of Babylon, but it's called Persia because they're in charge. And it tells us in the second chapter, it's the longest chapter in the book. It's 70 verses long. And it gives for us, verse 1, now these are the children of the province that went up out of the captivity of those which had been carried away, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away into Babylon. That's 70 years before. And they came again to Jerusalem and Judah, every one unto his city. And so in the regathering process, God's going to now list the people by name, and he's going to do a dual listing here. Many times he'll list the head of a family and the numbers of a family, and many times he'll list a particular town or a village or a province and the people that are coming back to the village from which they had been uprooted 70 years ago. Because God had given them the land by decree. He had set the boundaries of the land, and he wanted them to return to their proper boundaries. Now, not that I want to get too deep into it, but just quickly, if you were to go to Acts chapter 17, it's very interesting. The Lord, he does have plans, and he does have a plan A, but people often interpose their own wishes, desires, and free will, and God in his permissive will allows them to do something different, and we end up with a plan B, and it wasn't what God wanted in the first place. And when Paul was preaching in Acts chapter 17 to the men in Greece, in Athens, he was explaining, you don't seem to know anything about God. Verse 23, I found your altar with the inscription, the unknown God. And he says, whom therefore you ignorantly worship. You don't even know what you're doing. I'll declare him to you. And then he says, verse 24, God is the one that made the world. And God made all things therein. And see, he's the Lord of heaven and earth. And verse 26, he hath made of one blood all nations of men for to dwell on the face of the earth, and hath determined the times before appointed and the bounds of their habitation. And when the Lord laid down these nations, he actually put boundaries for them. This is where he wanted them. The Lord had separated people groups. He wanted them separated by language and by culture and by, skin color and eye and whatever. He wanted them separated is what he wanted. Now, why did he want to do that? Verse 27, that they should seek the Lord. More people would have found the Lord if they stayed where God put them in the history of mankind. But because man wants to be an explorer and wants to go where he wants to go and wants to do what he wants to do, and he wants to mix people together that shouldn't be mixed together with different cultures and different languages, confusion gets in it, and less people have been saved down through the generations because of man's disobedience to God. He set the boundaries. Now, when we get back here, I just wanted you to see that. Something we don't think about it too often, but that's a truth. God set their boundaries. But people just want to do what they want to do. He says, fine, do what you want. You're probably not going to get to know me. And so many people don't get to know God. Now, these Jewish people are going back, and they're going back to the villages where God put them, because they understand the importance of a close relationship with God and obedience unto God. Now, remember, these are people that are uprooting themselves out of a land of Babylon was a world empire. And at the time, they're going back to Israel, and Israel had been knocked about and was like a third world type of state at this time. Yeah, there were still a couple villages there, but there was not real big civilization going on there. There was not a lot of big cities with big lights and things going on there. And these people are willing to uproot themselves. After 70 years, they had worked their way into the land of Babylon. God had told them it would be okay for them to live there while they waited, and they waited, and they were doing okay, and they're coming back, and they're saying, look, what God has for us back in Israel is more important than anything we've got in Babylon, and we want to get back to where God wants us in our villages. And so he's going to number these people in the second chapter. Why, Lord? Why do you mention all these people? Because they're obedient to him and they're important to him, and he's putting their name in a Bible. You know, the Lord is writing the books up there. Someday the books will be opened. And I know he's done a careful recording of the history of his people in this book. And I'm talking the Jews, because mostly this is a Jewish book, and there's little recorded about the church in the New Testament and so much about the Jews in the Old Testament. But I'll bet in the New Testament, God's keeping records up there. And he's watching, and one day there's going to be an Ezra chapter 2 that may be written with your or my name in it, depending on how we follow. And in verse 2, he said, and these are the men which came with Zerubbabel. And Zerubbabel is going to be the governor of the land. And the men were Jeshua, that's going to be the priest, Nehemiah, Sarah, this is a different Nehemiah than the one later, it's a common name, Realiah, Mordecai, that's not the Mordecai of Esther, because he stays back in Persia. This is a different Mordecai. Bilshan, Mizpar, Bigvai, Rehum, Baana, the number of the men of the people of Israel. And then he begins to give names of heads of households and the amount of the children of Parosh, 2,172. The children of Shephatiah, 372. The children of Era, 775. The children of Pahath Moab, of the children of Jeshua and Joab. Pahath Moab was an area near the Moabites, and the fathers were Jeshua and Joab, and there were 2,812. The children of Elam, 1,254. The children of Zatu, 945. The children of Zakai, 703 score. The children of Bani, 642. The children of Bebai, 623. Children of Azgad, 1,222. The children of Adonikam, 666. The children of Bigvai, 2,056. And he's going to go through here, and he's mentioning people by name until he gets to verse 21. And then he mentions by certain regions the children of Bethlehem, 123. The children of Netophah, 56. The children of Anathoth, 128. The children of Asmaveth, 40. The children of Kirjath Aram, Shephirah, and Bearoth, 743. And he mentions these names of regions where they are as he works his way all the way down to verse 36. And then after he's mentioned some family names and some village names, he gets into certain priests, the children of Judea, of the house of Jeshua, 973, and the children of Immer, 1,052, the children of Pashur, 1,247, and the children of Haram, 1,017, and the Levites. And remember, there were priests and there were Levites. The priests were of the tribe of Kohath. They were the Kohanim. They were the ones that were actually allowed inside the holy place. Now, the most holy place, only the high priest could go into, but the holy place where they could light the candlestick, and where they could put the table of showbread and order it with the fresh showbread, and where they could put the incense in the altar and pray before the veil. Those were the priests of verse 36, 37, 38, and 9. But then there were the Levites, and the Levites did the work in the outer court, and they were allowed to kill the sacrifices, and they were allowed to carry certain articles around the temple, and they served the priests. They would be like, let's say, deacons, and the priests would, be like pastors and bishops. And the Levites, the children of Jeshua and Kadmiel, and the children of Hodaviah, 70 and 4. And then there were singers, the children of Asaph, 128, because the Lord brings not only truth to us, he should bring joy that should result in song and in music, and we should lift up our voice to the Lord, and we should play on the harp and the strings and sing and just rejoice before the Lord. And so singers are important, and they had choirs, and then there were porters, other people that helped, that wanted to help out, although they weren't technically Levites, and they weren't Kohanim. They were other tribes that wanted to help and to serve, the children of Shalom and Atar and children of Talmon and Akab and Hatita and Shobai, 139. And then there were the Nethinims, and the Nethinims they were personal attendants to the Levites, like secretaries might be, the children of Zion, the children of Hasufa and the Tabeoth and Kiros, and he works all the way through them. There were many people of a secondary nature that were great help, and he works all the way through verse 54, verse 55, the children of Solomon's servants, the children of Jaala in 56, and he works in the 58, the Nethinims, the children of Solomon's servants. He names them all up until he gets to 59. And then he says, and these were they which went up from Telmela, Telharsa, Kerub, Adam, and Immer. And these were places that they had lived in Babylon, and when they got there, they could not show their father's house and their seed, whether they were of Israel, the children of Delaiah, and the children of Tobiah, and the children of Nekoda, 652, and the children of the priests, the children of Habaiah, the children of Koz, the children of Barzillai. Barzillai, remember him, that helped David at that time, which took a wife of the daughters of Barzillai, the Gileadite, and was called after their name. These sought their register among those that were reckoned by genealogy, but they were not found. Therefore were they, as polluted, put from the priesthood. Now at that time, you're getting ready to, there are people that want to help and they want to serve. And some of them are saying, I remember, I'm pretty sure I'm a priest. I'm pretty sure my genealogy stretches back to the priesthood, but they couldn't find that genealogy. Maybe it was destroyed at the time of the Babylonian captivity. And it said, as they sought that register and they were not found, they were put from the priesthood, has polluted. Now, what God is trying to show us here is, from the Jewish standpoint, genealogy is exceedingly important. They were a physical people, and they required a physical seed. Go back to the book of 1 Chronicles chapter 9. This is an Old Testament reality, and it has a New Testament spiritual application. And these are the first original registers of Israel and Judah, back at the time when the priests are chronicling it, as we're getting in ready to establish the city of Jerusalem and the throne of Judah. And it says in verse 1 of 1 Chronicles 9, so all Israel were reckoned by genealogies. And behold, they were written in the book of the kings of Israel and Judah. And then mentions who were carried away to Babylon for their transgression. He mentions that later truth. He's writing here in about 1200 BC. And then he goes on and he tells you the first inhabitants that dwelt in their possessions. And you read through here. You read through Chronicles, the first 9-10 chapters. It's all these chronicles and genealogies, because it's important to God that a genealogy was right in the service of his people. The Lord had determined when he brought them out of the land that I'm going to establish this tribe for worship and this tribe for rulership, and it has to be the way I have said it. Now, one of the portraits for us in the New Testament, in order to draw nigh unto God and to worship at his temple, or to be part of the building or the rebuilding of his temple, which is the church, you've got to prove your genealogy, which is you must be born again in Jesus Christ, or you as polluted will be put from the priesthood. When I studied sermon prep and delivery, and I taught sermon prep and delivery for those years, and we were looking at young men that wanted to go in the ministry, the requirements for being a minister. The first requirement is ye must be born again. If you're not born again, you have no right being involved in the ministry of the New Testament Church of Jesus Christ. If you can't show your genealogy, then God will put you as polluted from the priesthood. And he will look at you as something that's polluted. We think of polluted as dirty air and dirty water. God looks at it like dirty religion, like dirty spirit. And he doesn't want that flowing through his pipes any more than you want sewer water at your tap when you go on in your kitchen and you turn that tap on. You don't want to drink that. And God's not going to allow that. And he'll put you as polluted from the priesthood. And now at this time, back where we were in Ezra chapter 2, when these people were trying to get into it, verse 63, it says that Tirshatha, that's another word for governor if you have a marginal reference. And that governor at that particular time would have been Zerubbabel. And he was overseeing this work. He said to them, here's what we'll do. You should not eat of the most holy things till there stands up a priest with the Urim and the Thummim. And at that particular time, the high priest had the breastplate of righteousness, and the Urim and the Thummim was in it, and it was one of the ways that they could go into the holy place and inquire of God, and God could give them direction, and they might be able to go in for some of these children or Barzillai and go, Lord, the records were lost on the trip to Babylon, and we really don't know, and can you reveal to us whether or not thou knowest, Lord, what's in the books in heaven? Is this one that truly was part of it? And they had to wait on the Lord for the answer. And today, many times if someone is candidating to be a part of a church in an important ministry, you got to wait on the Lord and pray for him to reveal and confirm with your spirit that this is someone that is like-minded and of like spirit through the new birth. And it might not get it immediately, but it's worth waiting on and going on to God. And that's what happened here. And then finally, he ends the chapter. And when it's all done and all these numbers together, the whole congregation, this is the people from Babylon to Judah, was 42,303 score. That'd be 42,360. Besides their servants and their maids, of whom there were 7,337, and there were among them 200 singing men and women, and I did the math, and when you total it up, the grand total that returned back was 49,897. 49,000 is like, 7 times 7. And so it's a good number that are coming back from Babylon. Now, the sad thing is, there may be many of 500,000 living in Babylon. And this represents maybe 1 out of 10 returning to be with the Lord. Yes, brother. I honestly don't know that number. I have no concept. I'll see if I can look historically to find out. I have no idea, but it's 1 out of 10 that are coming back. Now, Luke 17, right? Luke chapter 17, it's kind of the same portrait again. Go Luke 17, verses 11 through 17. Now, these people who are doing this are dedicated. They're beyond just mere Israelite believers. They're dedicated Jews, dedicated to the service of God and the building of God's work. It takes a lot to uproot yourself and to move from a place where you have a home and comfort to go to a place that's a wilderness and involved in rebuilding. Now, in Luke chapter 17, in verse 11, it came to pass as he, that would be Jesus from the earlier verses, went to Jerusalem. He passed through the midst of Samaria and Galilee, and he entered into a certain village, and there met him 10 men that were lepers, which stood afar off, and they lifted up their voices. They said, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. And when he saw them, he said unto them, Go, show yourselves to the priests. And it came to pass, as they went, they were cleansed. And he cleansed them of the sickness, the disease of leprosy, which in the scriptures is a picture of sin. And they were cleansed from their leprosy, which is a picture of 10 people getting cleansed from their sins. Now, verse 15, one of them When he saw that he was healed, he turned back, and with a loud voice he glorified God. And he fell down on his face at Jesus' feet, giving him thanks. He was a Samaritan. And Jesus answered and said, were there not 10 cleansed? Where are the 9? There are not found that returned to give glory to God, save this stranger. And 1 out of 10 were returning to give glory. And here we've got 500,000 Jews in Babylon, and 59,000, 1 out of 10 are coming back, returning to give glory to God in the rebuilding of his temple. And it seems that over the years, that's kind of the way it works. In your average work of God, church, it's 10% that are doing most of the work. The other 90%, they're cleansed, they're doing what they want. You know, you look at that passage just quickly, at verse 19, and Jesus says, arise, go thy way, thy faith hath made thee whole. And if you look at the words, the word cleansed and the word whole, and the verse in 1 John 1, verses 7 through 9 says, the blood of Jesus Christ cleanseth from all sin. So all 10 of them were saved, if you will, but only one of them was made whole. And 1 Thessalonians 5:23 says, I pray thy whole spirit, thy whole soul, thy whole body be preserved blameless. That's a fully dedicated disciple of God. And, you know, I was thinking about this. Those guys ran and they were cleansed. You can have leprosy. It's in your nervous system, and it numbs you up. And you can go and you can be cleansed of that condition, that disease. But leprosy often, what happens to the leper is, while he has the condition inside of him, because he's unaware of feeling, sometimes when he sleeps at night, maybe an insect or a rat or something will come up and nibble a part of his finger off, or he'll lie sleeping and you know his face is over to the side, pushing on his nose, and the nose is very delicate regarding blood flow, and he gets lack of blood flow, and a part of the nose begins to die off, and part of the skin drops off, and he's got disfigured face and disfigured hands and feet and everything. Now, they went away, they were all cleansed, but that guy that went back to Jesus, he was made whole. I wouldn't doubt that guy was restored and got his nose back and his fingers back that the other 9 guys didn't get. And the point is, when you stay close to Jesus, he's going to make you whole spiritually, that other people who are saved, although they're cleansed, they're still a mess inside. They've still got anxiety, they've still got problems, they've still got things that bug them and nag them, and they're saved, but they're confused. And the ones that stay with Jesus are whole. And so that's a portrait going on back here to where we are. So I want to show you a few more things that are interesting in here, if you'll permit me. I don't know how deep to go. The name of the Antichrist is given in this chapter. And I can show you if you want. I don't know if I want this to get out, but I can show it to you. Yes, in Ezra 2. We just went over it. And I'll show it to you. But anyways, getting back to it, you've probably seen it on your own without me helping you, but let's take a look here in Ezra chapter 2. So the whole congregation, it tells us in verse 64, 65, that these are how many people went back, and they went back and they brought their goods, their horses. They brought 736 horses and mules, 245, and they brought camels, 435, and asses, 6,720. They're bringing back, if you will, machinery, caterpillar machinery, to be involved in the work. There's work to be done, and they're bringing back their important stuff with them to get it done. Verse 28, and some of the chief of the fathers, when they came to the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, offered freely for the house of God to set it up in his place. And they brought a love offering, a free love offering. How much? Well, they gave after their ability to the treasure of the work 61,000 drams of gold. That's 61,000 drams of gold. I had to look it up. A dram is a Persian coin that weighs 128 grains, and I converted it to ounces. And when you multiplied it times today's market value, which is $1,285 an ounce, that's $22,885,000 worth of gold they brought. And they brought 5,000 pounds of silver at today's spot price of $17.50. That's $1,400,000 of silver. And they also brought priest garments. And the priests and the Levites and some of the people and the singers and the porters and the Nethinims dwelt in their cities, all of Israel in their cities. They were in their place where God wanted them. And they brought this offering of $24.5 million as their first love offering for the rebuilding of God's temple. And so their heart was in it. Their mind was in it. Their soul was in it. Their strength was in it. Even the strength of their pocketbook was in it. They wanted to glorify God. They wanted to dedicate themselves to God. They wanted to give glory to their God. Even after 70 years of captivity, they wanted to get back to their God. They felt dry and thirsty, and they wanted to get back. Yes, brother. Oh, yeah. Oh, Cyrus did say them in verse 4, whosoever remaineth, let him give and help too. And I don't know how much they gave, but I know those men that came back were givers. Sometimes the people that stay behind, those other ones that are just cleansed, they're not as interested as the ones that want to be made whole. Now, some of the interesting things is verse 28. The men of Bethel and Ai. Back in the book of Joshua, when they were settling the land, Ai was a troublesome place that they encountered. And Bethel and Ai are two portraits there. Bethel is a picture of the house of God, and Ai is a picture of the flesh. And I just thought the number was interesting. It's 2, 2, 3. And I just, for someone who likes Bible math, 22 is the number of letters in the Hebrew alphabet. God is building his temple based on his word. And that's Bethel. Notice Bethel is mentioned first. It's mentioned ahead of Ai. I mean, alphabetically, I put Ai first, but he put Bethel first because it's the house of God. Ai is a picture of the flesh. And so if the 22 represents Bethel, 23 is a picture of Ai, and 23 in the Bible is a number of death. And living in the flesh is a way of death. I just thought that was interesting to look at numbers like that. But the real interesting thing was verse 13. The children of Adonikim, 660 and 6. Now, if you go a little further in... Go to the book of Revelation, and we'll pick it up from there, and then I'm going to take you to a number of places to make some sense of this thing. First time I noticed it. Now, we know in Revelation there is a verse given to us in the 13th chapter. And the 13th chapter of the book of Revelation is the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns that comes out, and the devil, called the dragon, gives his power to this beast, and this beast is a picture of the Antichrist. And this beast comes up, and then later on another beast in verse 11 comes up, and this is the false prophet. And this false prophet goes around and says, we've got to give honor and glory to this Antichrist, and what he wants to do, verse 16, is cause all people, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, that no man might buy or sell, that he that had the mark, you got to have that mark, save he had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. And the number is 666. Now there's two other passages in Scripture where you see the number 666. One has to do with Solomon, and it talks about the amount of gold that he's getting in trading with another nation. So that's not the number of a man, that's a number of money. That's the accounting number. And here, the other place is verse 13, where I got the number of a man, and the name is Adonikim in Ezra chapter 2. Okay, so I read this, and I go on in my reading. I get to the next book, so we're going to jump ahead. Got a little time here. We'll take some fun. And when you get in the next book, it's the book of Nehemiah. And in the book of Nehemiah, now Ezra is the priest, religion. Nehemiah is the governor, civil. And so Ezra gives us his account of the number of people. When Nehemiah comes, he gives his count in the 7th chapter. So they're kind of two parallel chapters. Nehemiah 7. And you can take a look in verse 6. These are the children of the province that went up out of the captivity of those that had been carried away, whom Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, carried away and came again to Jerusalem, to Judah, everyone to his city. These are the people who came with Zerubbabel, Jeshua, Nehemiah, Azariah, Rehemiah, Nehemiah, Mordecai, Bilshan. You remember all these names, the children of Parosh, and then it starts giving the numbers. And it goes down here, and it's pretty much a parallel account of what happened in Ezra. And when you get to verse 18, it says, the children of Adonikim. And then all of a sudden it says 667. And the number's not the same. Yeah, no, it's right. The number's not the same. So Revelation 13:18, it tells us, look for the beast's number. And then we get to Ezra 2 and verse 13, and it tells us there's a man named Adonai Cam. Now, Adonai means Lord. And this guy, Adonai Cam, and I'll tell you what Cam means in a minute, is given, we tell that his number 666. Then all of a sudden we get in Nehemiah 7:18, and it also mentions Adonai Cam, but it says 667. And I thought, well, there's an error. But there isn't. Because the answer is going to be found in a few places. One of the first places we're going to have to go is the book of Proverbs. Proverbs 28. So then I'm reading along. One of the things I had to do is I said, okay, Adonai Cam, what does that mean? It means Lord. And I'm sure that the Antichrist is going to desire that he's called Lord. Because the devil wants worship, and the Antichrist is going to desire worship because his heart is full of the devil. Proverbs 28. And Adonai means Lord, but Cam means rise. Lord, rise. Proverbs 28, verse 12. When righteous men do rejoice, there is great glory. One of the reasons they rejoice is when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But this is the time when the Antichrist is in charge, and it's not going to be a time of rejoicing because there's not going to be a righteous man in authority. But when the wicked rise, a man is hidden. Lord, rise. Now I know he's called that wicked in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. So turn over to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Let's see if we can put this together the way I see it. Second Thessalonians chapter 2. When the wicked rise, a man is hidden. Now in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, the Lord is letting us know that at the end of verse 3, a man of sin is going to be revealed. That man of sin will be the son of perdition. This is the Antichrist. He's going to oppose and exalt himself above all that is called God or that is worship, and that he as God will sit in the temple of God, showing himself he is God. This is the abomination of desolation, when he goes into the holy place in the middle of the tribulation and says, I'm God, worship me. And the prophet says, let's make an idol to this guy, and we'll have it here. And this is the abomination of desolation. Verse 5, remember ye not that when I was with you, I told you these things. Now, Paul had explained to the Thessalonians about the rapture and explained about the after the rapture, the time of the tribulation for 7 weeks, and then explained when that was all done, there would be the revelation of Jesus Christ. So first there would be the rapture in the air to get the church out, then the purging of the Jewish people, and then the revelation where Jesus, not just in the air, he comes back to planet Earth and sets up his kingdom again. And he explains to them in verse 6, and you know that what withholdeth, that he might be revealed in his time. For right now the mystery of iniquity is working. But there's a day, verse 8, when the wicked shall be revealed. When a man is hidden. When the wicked rises, a man is hidden. The wicked will be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. This man, this wicked man, verse 9, is him whose coming is after the working of Satan. And so he's going to be full of Satan's power, with all powers and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie. Well, what's the strong delusion God's going to send them? Well, back in the 13th chapter of Revelation, remember what happened to him in verse 3 and in verse 8. When this Antichrist came on the scene, his head is wounded, and then his deadly wound is healed, and all the world wonders after the beast. And verse 8, and everyone that dwells on the earth worships him. So, 666 to 667. Here's his number, and here's his name. When he first appears, he's a man. Just like Judas Iscariot was a man. Men have a body, they have a soul, they have a spirit. Somewhere in the first 3.5 years, probably toward the end of it, he's going to be wounded in the head, and he is going to die. And his soul will leave his body, like it does when people die. The soul is separated from the body, it says in Genesis. And that body's going to lie there. And then God's going to give strong delusion and allow a false resurrection. See, the people of the world don't believe the resurrection of Jesus Christ. They believe it's a lie. And many people will often say to you, you know, if there is a God and he did want to have a resurrection, why would he have it 2,000 years ago? Why wouldn't he wait till there were Polaroids and cameras and videos so that he could do it and people could see it? Then nobody would deny it. And God said, oh, is that what you want? Well, then why don't we wait till the time of videos and cameras and Polaroids, and I'll let this guy, you don't want to believe my written record. You'd rather walk by sight rather than by the faith of hearing my word. I'm going to allow that soul to go down, and what's going to come up is the same devil that was in Judas, because a devil entered into his heart, and that same devil's going to enter into him and take over his body, and the wicked's going to rise. That's why the number goes from 666 to 667. There's a different spirit in there. The body's the same, but the it's another spiritual count. There's someone else inside of there. So I think you're stretching it. Well, this is going to happen before the second coming, correct? This is going to happen during the 7-year tribulation. 13:18, 13:18, 13:18, 13:18, second coming, 7-year trib. It's kind of hidden in there. And when the Lord Adonaikem rises, the man is hidden, and a new spirit's inside there, and the world thinks, oh my gosh, you can't kill this guy. Now, little do they realize it's a counterfeit resurrection. It's a one-time event, and it's not a soul back in him. It's a devil, but they're not going to know that. And that's going to be the false Christ coming up. Now, the name is Adonaikem. It's interesting. When you go back to the Gospels, you'll find that the first type of the son of perdition was Judas. And he's the son of Simon. Now, 13 is a number of rebellion. And the number of the Judas Iscariot has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 letters in it. Here's the name Adonaikem. And Judas was the son of Simon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 numbers. That probably is his name. Simon Adonaikem. By the way, there's a church built on its rock is Peter or Simon. Simon, Peter. And they play a game all around the world called Simon Says. And they're going to do what Simon says when he's in charge. So most likely that's the name of the Antichrist. And here's wisdom. And so you can go through it. Now that's what I get. Take it home, pray about it, keep it, do what you want with it. You don't have to put it out there for people to hear. But that's what I got a number of years ago looking at it, and it seems to be it. And there were a few other things I found too, but that's enough to give you something to mull over and to consider there. I had done some other math that showed it to be so, but that's simple enough, as you can see. And I think we're out of time. And next week we'll do something else. Amen.